Okay, that's it. The doors are locked, so I guess it's time to start. So firstly, I'd like to welcome all of you here. Thank you all for turning up. My name's Graham Wood. I am the chairman of Whitton Business Association. You may have seen our work out under the guise of Love Whitton, which is us as well. We put on all the events in the high street, and we have a lot of our traders signed up to us as well. We basically look after business and community interests, and I will be chairing tonight. Just a quick rundown of what we've done before I introduce you to the ward councillors in the last few months. You may have seen on social media and a lot of shops the sit stop sign. We've got sit stop to come in. They basically, all the shops that have the sit stop sign in are happy for people, especially the elderly, but those are a little bit disabled, need somewhere to go and sit and have a breather. You can go and sit in their shops. They're quite happy for you to go and spend 5-10 minutes to get your breath back. Realise, which is one of our members, they have a regular senior citizens coffee morning. If you go and speak to them, speak to Paul in there, he'll let you know when they have it, and that's proved to be quite popular at the moment. We also put on the St George's Day event and the Christmas event. Quite a few people have asked us where the money goes that we make from that. It all goes towards Christmas lights. We need to make about £12,500 a year to pay for the Christmas lights. It's not cheap. So all the money that we make from that, from the raffles, from the WBA stalls, everything goes in towards that. If there is any left over, which there never has been yet, but if there is any left over at the end of it, we will find something to do with it, hopefully involving schools or youth groups or anything else with the community. We have a couple of our community police here. We have Sergeant John McLaughlin and PC Chris, never got his surname, Hollins, who is a new member of the team here. They may be able to field some questions later on if anything's related to them, possibly. And we have the councillors from Heathfield. We've got Councillor Coombs, Councillor Palesh, who's just had to run home to get her glasses, but she will be back hopefully very, very soon, and Councillor Wilson. And then representing, it sounds like it's a team game, isn't it? From Whitton, we have Liz Yeager, Robert O'Carroll and Councillor Joe Humphreys. And at the back of the room, she's going to give us a wave, we have the leader of the council. Thank you very much for turning up, which is Councillor Gareth Roberts. The community conversation, which is what this is, if you were here at the last one, you'll know what it's all about. It's basically, it's your chance to speak to the councillors about what you'd like to see happen, any issues you have, any questions you have, and basically give them a bit of a grilling. It's their job, so don't hold back, go for it. And so they can get to know your concerns of what's going on in the neighbourhood and in the borough, in the area. Before we get going fully, fire exits, we've got one there, we have one at the back, and out through that way. Basically, if there's a fire or emergency, follow me, because I'm going to be the one running out of here first. My role as chair is to make sure that you will get heard. So if you have a question, your question will be heard. It will be answered. If they can't answer it here and now, which happens sometime, they will get back to you. If they don't, I will make sure they will get back to you. We've just had a exhibition at the back about Nella Hall, and we'll be having questions on that later on, I'm sure. Very shortly I'm going to hand you over to the ward councillors, who will speak to you briefly about the local ward achievements that have been going on, that they've done in since the last meeting. We then have some pre-submitted questions. If anyone has pre-submitted a question but hasn't seen Ellie at the back, please stick your hand up and she will bring a printed copy of your question to you, just to make it easier. Ellie, we have one. She's signing someone in. She will come see you, just so you have it to read out, because it'll be a lot easier. The event is being recorded, it's being videoed, it will go up onto YouTube. You're not being videoed, the councillors are. However, all the audio is being recorded, so you will need to use a microphone. Even if you've got a nice big loud voice, it won't come out if you don't use the mic. So, if you want to ask a question, when we get to the questions, raise your hand, the microphone will be brought to you, just rest it under your chin and talk normally. You don't need to hold it there. If you put it down by your belly buttons don't talk. Just make sure that you've got it near your mouth and it will be heard. And as long as we can all be heard, that's fine. If you haven't signed in, can you please just sign in at the back of the hall, or make sure you sign the sheet before you leave. I think that's basically it from me, so I'm going to push a button, turn your microphones on, and away we go with the councillors. Who wishes to start?
Okay, right.
It's on. It was on.
Right. Hello everybody, thanks for coming. The advantage of kicking off is that I can say all my things without them getting stolen by the Heathfield councillors. But I'll kick off with Whitton Library. If you've been to Whitton Library recently, you'll know that there's been a lot of improvements. After our really hot summer last year, there's air conditioning now in the library. Also, there's the new community space at the back of the library, and this is what used to be the restroom, but it's been incorporated into the library. There's a sort of official opening event in June, but I think it's being used already. It looks wonderful, viewing through the doors. So, you know, if there's anyone here from the Friends of Whitton Library, but, you know, some nice work going on there to improve our library, and thanks also to Councillor Coombs, who's our lead member on libraries. In Whitton as well, we've progressed with the CPZ issues. I can understand that some people may not necessarily call this an achievement, but nevertheless, they have been done where the majority of people in those areas say they want them. And so I think it's good that we're getting on with that. Some of you may wonder where the second one is that I'm talking about. This is opposite the rugby ground, and it's mainly the North Twickenham area, but there's one road in Whitton, Kendry Gardens, which is incorporated in that. So they will be communicating with people who live in those areas near the station and over by the rugby ground to explain where the parking bays are going to go and so on. Constance Road pavements are looking a lot better than they did, and although I've got one person pointing out to me a bit that got left out, seemingly, but I think so a bit of improvement there on pavements. Also, if you're a visitor to Murray Park, you'll see that Murray Park Hall has had a bit of a makeover. I think, though, that was done before the November meeting here. This meeting in itself is an achievement, because you might remember they were only every 4 years, and now we've had 2 in 1 year. But the improvements at Murray Park Hall, one of the questions that's been submitted is trying to make sure we don't sit back and leave it that way, but that we keep doing what we can for our local police at Murray Park. Electric vehicle charging points. All the councillors have had quite a bit to do with the people who are looking at the best places to put those. And of course we field questions around, well, why here, not there, and so on. But that's progressing. And finally, you've probably seen, but planning money does come this way when people think of good projects. And a nice project that has got some planning money is St Philip and St James's Church Hall, where they're looking at kind of connecting that wonderful hall better with green space around it, and doors in, all sorts of things there. So there's a bit of an update of what's going on. I'm sure it's not comprehensive, but that kicks the meeting off anyway. Thank you.
Okay, who would like to
Speak next.
Okay, well, we have managed to work with 2 different sets of residents. The one set of residents that we have worked with is in Montrose Avenue and Jubilee Avenue, who have been wanting to have a controlled parking zone in their area for some time, and we have managed to make sure that the council is now in a position, and a letter has gone out, I think, to all the residents in that particular area, explaining which streets expressed a desire to be within the CPZ, and a CPZ known as the Whitton South CPZ will be introduced once people have responded to that. So we worked with residents there. The second place we worked with residents is to form a Friends of Heathfield Rec group, Many of the parks and open spaces in this borough have friends groups, and we felt it was imperative that local residents could have input into how Heathfield Rec could be further improved so that the community can in fact use it better. And so that friends group is now up and running and is working closely with council officials to work on how to improve the Heathfield Rec area. The other places that we have managed to achieve something is, and this is very local, we have two areas where planning has not been carried through very well, where builders have started on projects and then left them. The most notable one is 310 Nelson Road. The other one was 190, that was 192 Waverley Avenue. These two buildings, one of which has been left for about 14 years, and we have managed in fact to get the builders in both cases to get to a position where we've got roofs on both of them, and in the very near future we hope to have people living in these properties again. Across a number of streets in the ward we have also ensured that the paving has been repaired, and going away from the previous administration's point of view for having to bid to have your street done, we've gone back to the system of repairing streets as and when those particular streets need it, and a number of streets in Heathfield have managed to be repaved that way. So those are some of the things that we've managed to do since we last met.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone got anything to add on that? Or shall we move to
Sorry.
That's a fine.
Sorry, I disappeared, but I had to get my glasses. Can't see. I'd just like to add something to the Friends of Heathfield Rec, because there are good things afoot. My husband is actually on the commission here, and he had a meeting today. Are you on? So yes. I went out for a tour around Heathfield Rec with Gibson, and we hope to get some new trees, quite a lot of new trees, some more benches, normal long benches to sit on if people want to sit there, and also hopefully 3 or 4 picnic benches, you know, the benches with seats either side for mums and whatever near to the play areas. So this is all good stuff for Heathfield Rec. The other thing I would like to mention is that I have tried to push forward, and it is going forward. I understand the traffic issues around Heathfield School very clearly, and the school travel plan which Heathfield School are drawing up, which is necessary before traffic improvement measures can be implemented, is going forward and should be completed quite soon. And I'm in constant contact with the lady of the council, so as soon as that's set in place, then we can look to try and do some things around Heathfield School to improve the parking and the driving more.
And there's a couple of issues which obviously cuts across Whitton and Heathfield, which we've been working on. One is the bus consultation on the H22 service, which closed just after the Christmas and New Year period. That many of you will probably be aware that Hammersmith Bridge is now closed, and that is having an impact in terms of what they are going to do in terms of the bus consultation. The likelihood is Hammersmith Bridge is going to be closed for a number of years, and that's what it's recently come out. The repair work is quite significant, so the likelihood is that the consultation, they've made some changes to bus services over in Mortlake, but obviously I think it'll be a little bit of time before we find out if any changes happen to the H22 service. But we did work with putting in a consultation response on behalf of the 6 of us, taking into account some of the feedback that we received at the last community conversation as well. And we did make that available on Whitton Village for for people to see. And then the other issue, which...
Michael, could I just jump in there? I actually spoke to TfL this afternoon just to try and get a really clear idea on what's happening with the consultation. And what's happening at the moment is that they're carrying on doing the analysis of all the data that came in. So that's going on as always was planned. They've had about 4,000 responses to the consultation, which is obviously quite a lot of data to go through. And they're expecting the report to be ready on that data sort of round about early September. But what they have said, and this is where what Michael said comes in, is that potentially at that point the report then might have to be put on hold depending on what's happening with Hammersmith Bridge. So they're carrying on doing the work as normal, but the report itself might be delayed and will certainly be influenced by whatever long-term decisions are made about Hammersmith Bridge.
And the other obviously issue which has been bubbling along for quite some time now is Turing House School. I know we've got a couple of questions I think on it later on, but obviously we've been engaged on that issue with local residents and as well as the Hospital Bridge Road Action Group as well, so that's been taking up our time.
Yeah, we'll be coming on to that later on, I'm sure. As there's someone standing up at the back, we will be coming to the floor for questions later on. Oh, sorry, I thought you were looking at you wanted to ask. Fine. No, it's just if you wanted to ask a question, that'll happen later on. Just didn't want you standing for no reason. Anyone else have anything to add before we go to pre-submitted? No, I think that's about it. We're going to go to pre-submitted questions first. We have quite a few that have been pre-submitted. What I want to say quickly is it might upset some of you, but because the councillor in Perth and we have some elections coming up, we're not allowed to talk about Brexit. I'm sorry.
Thank goodness.
I know it's this new thing that's just come up and it's taken some of it, but we can't talk about Brexit, we can't talk about anything EU related. And it is a local councillors meeting, so it's not going to go political. If anyone goes political, I will be handing around the swear box. So, and the money we raise from that will go to the British Lights. So the first question we have is Susan Lee here, please. No? Shall I read her question out then? She's reading out loud without my glasses. Well, you can read it if you want to read it. I don't mind reading. No, I'll read it. Okay, it says, although I've raised this before, I'd still like to ask if we can have signs on lampposts in Whitton, as they do in Ealing, to say cold calling not permitted in this area. I'm not asking for it to be supported in any way, as I feel signs alone are a deterrent, as we have an older population in Whitton, and there has been more distraction doorstep crime in Whitton recently, this could help prevent these incidents. While I understand Richmond local authority prefer fewer signs in the borough, I do feel these are important. Who would like to start on that?
Well, I'm happy to say something.
Okay.
Well, it's just, I'm fairly certain that Susan Lee brought this issue to me. If it wasn't Susan Lee, it was someone else bringing exactly this issue up. And I raised it some time ago now at our local police liaison group meeting, because I have some sympathy with this actually. And but the answer we have from the council officers to this question is indeed saying we like to keep signage to an absolute minimum. So I don't think this question is likely to succeed really. But the way we talked about it there at our police liaison group meeting was that there are various stickers that you can put in your window to say you do not appreciate cold callers. And we handed a lot of those out at the meeting where I raised it. And we can try to make sure that there are more available. This is something that the community safety team at the council have prepared in the past, these stickers. So I think in answer to that question, I would say we try and make sure these stickers are available. I don't know whether the police have. Bill gave me some. Yes. So. If you need these stickers, let us know.
Yeah, which will find somewhere that they can be placed for people to pick them up.
Yes.
Okay, hopefully that answers that one. Is this related to the question?
It is indeed.
If it is indeed, then the microphone will be passed to you.
Thanks. Just reference your answer to this.
Sorry, can you hold the microphone up?
I certainly can. The reference your answer to this, there might be merit in you having a conversation with Les Jackson, about this because he is keen on identifying the vulnerable, whether they be elderly or young, across the borough, and of course Whitton and Heathfield part of the borough. He is doing some work on identifying that, and if there is an issue of that, that might be the first target audience to get whatever this is. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have Kevin Henchman here? Are you here? Okay. That's basically, it's a question I know has come up a few times before regarding the toilets next to Whitton Library and the condition they are in. I know they're never particularly pleasant, and I think that's something we can just keep badgering whoever's responsible for cleaning to get it done. I think that needs a lot of discussion. I don't think anyone's quite happy with that. But is this regarding that question?
Yeah, who is responsible?
Who is responsible?
Well, Continental Landscapes are responsible for opening them up, closing them and cleaning them. The trouble is, I was down there just the other day and they're all locked up at the moment, the ladies and the gents. Luckily, I was able to use the disabled one, which is still working, but the reason they're locked up is because the drains are blocked. So, and I don't actually know when that's going to get fixed.
Sorry, who is Continental Landscapes?
It's a council contractor. They do a lot of work with the council. But so the next question, of course, is who's responsible for monitoring what they do? And we do know who that is, and we badger them a lot. But right now, my understanding is that the issue is that the drains themselves are blocked. A vast amount of paper's been put down there, and and I don't, I'm afraid, know when that's likely to be cleared. I know you were asking the other day, weren't you? I don't know if you got any more out of them.
No.
No, I'm sorry.
Again, is this related to the... Okay, just wait for the microphone, please. Thank you.
Would it make better sense to look at incorporating the toilets into the library, because that way there's going to be much less vandalism, and over the years you probably get vandalised monthly, if not more often. So like pay for itself in a couple of years.
You notice everyone's looking at me on that one, because as the person who, the councillor who is responsible for the library service, the one thing I don't want librarians or librarian assistants to do is run public toilets. Now, it's true that in a couple of the council's libraries there are public toilets. That's in Twickenham and Teddington. The library service has the same issues with its contractor, who has to clean those toilets, as the other one. It is a question, because there is a divide between these toilets and the library, is the reason why the library service, in my position, is unwilling to take them on. They would have to be within the curtilage of the library so that we would know who's going in and out of those toilets, because they're vandalised by residents using them. Now, if colleagues are willing to give me the money to bring those toilets within the curtilage of the library service, there would be an argument to do so. At the moment, however, the library service is running each year on slightly less money than the year before. So the chances of us taking that within the library is something that I have resisted. You can tell I've resisted it by the way they've all looked at me. By the moments people say, it is the most logical thing to do. I accept that. It's all about giving the library service the money to be able to do it. If they did that, there wouldn't be an issue. But it is a money issue, as so many things are.
I think the first thing we need to do is get the drains unblocked.
Which luckily is not the library services issues. The library, I think their drainage is all right.
Yeah, well, for whatever reason, I think that needs to get unblocked, so at least we can open them, and then work on keeping them clean. Okay, we have, I haven't seen him here, but Michael Faulkner, are you here? He's not, okay. He's submitted 3, but I think only 1 really needs to be read out. We can leave 2 of them because they're kind of not. Michael is the manager at Sainsbury's, put him in the wrong store, in the High Street. And he has come up with something that an awful lot of businesses, as chair of the Business Association, I get this weekly. It says we seem to be struggling to get our deliveries in, or biffa waste pickup deliveries to come and collect us. And that's the same with a lot of other shops as well, due to people constantly parking in loading bays, as they know they can get away with it due to no traffic warden being around as of late. I appreciate parking is tight and people park there just for ease or laziness. The problem is for themselves and for some of the other shops that have food waste, they need to have those biffa collections. Sometimes they're actually going to be in breach of their trading licence if they don't get their waste collected. And obviously hygiene problems as well. They've recently had a month without waste being collected due to the biffa lorries never being able to park anywhere, especially in the loading bay. It doesn't help as customers are moaning due to delivery drivers tooting at them, telling them to get out of the loading bays. And if you go up the high street at any time, like today, out of all the spaces, I counted 11 cars in loading bays. If you're going into Tesco's to pick your shopping up, you are shopping, not loading, is basically what they're saying. Is there any chance of, one, getting traffic wardens back again, so that we can have that properly policed, if that's the right word for it? And also, if you look outside Lidl, there's a loading bay written on the road and there's a normal time plate on the lamppost, which means nothing is enforceable. So you've got free parking all day, which I think some people have cottoned on to because there are cars parked there for hours. You've got 2 hours free parking, which is probably enough for most people. Can we please have that enforced? It's 1 hour at one end, it's 2 hours in the middle, it's 30 minutes up by the station. That is basically saying, and a lot of the other shopkeepers are saying, can we please have traffic wardens back? Because it's affecting their business.
Graham, can I answer that? I will flag that up to see if we can get traffic wardens down there on a more regular basis. I know they disappeared for what seemed like years and then suddenly reappeared again.
Well, they happened to reappear after the last community conversation. I know I'm supposed to be impartial, but on this I'm not. I'll tell you whose side I'm on.
I can understand
and it ain't yours. We need to get parking traffic wardens down there.
No.
One, so people can actually park and use our shops. If people can't use the shops, they're going to go out of business. And every time a shop shuts on the high street, social media goes into one, blaming greedy landlords. It's not greedy landlords that are parking cars and vans in the high street all day.
No, I agree. Can I just ask you, it's got here the loading bays, otherwise I'm doing something illegal on a daily basis. I thought it was 8:30 to 4:30.
8:30 to 4:30, you can park there for 2 hours.
Yeah. Is that?
I don't know who's written that bit because you've got a different sheet to me.
Oh, right.
The parking restrictions is 8:30 to 4:30,
Yeah.
2 hours with no return within an hour. Loading bays is loading only. It's not for cars to pick up their shopping or to jump in and go and grab something out of the shop because there's a spare space. It is for lorries.
Okay.
So could that please be looked and we have...
Will do.
Answer the question.
So, then let's go.
I'd just like to ask why Whitton doesn't have traffic wardens, because they travel in packs in Twickenham and they travel in packs in Richmond.
Thank you.
But we don't get them in Whitton. And the disabled spots, which is my hobby horse, are always parked with able-bodied people, some of whom have disabled cards. And I spent years with the disabled lady trying to find parking there, and I never did. We just don't get our fair share, and we pay our taxes like everybody else.
Yes, yes.
Well, one of my colleagues can tell me if I'm wrong on this, but under the last, I'm sorry, I'm going to be slightly political. Under the last administration, the number of parking attendants was cut in the contract. We've just increased that number from 24 up to 36, I think, to cover the whole borough. So the numbers are going up. In terms of, it's not just the loading bays. The last community conversation, I've had a conversation with people out there as well about the drop-off bay outside Whitton Station needing to be enforced as well. So yes, there was a sort of a flurry of activity after the last community conversation, but there has been flurries of activity since as well, because it's been raised on a regular basis. But bear in mind, it is 36 now for the entire borough.
We need one guy 4 times a day.
The other thing which
Twice a day.
The other thing which will, I hope, help this. The other thing which I think will help is the controlled parking zone, which is coming in. Previously, we've obviously only had really the Bryanston Avenue 11 until 12, sort of one, you see a guy on a moped who will come round checking that out every sort of few days. With the CPZ, obviously there will need to be some enforcement with it. So as part of that general routine, I would expect, obviously there's the bit of the north end of Whitton, north of the High Street, north of where Whitton South is, where we'll be, the enforcement officers will be going as well. So I would think that there should be a general uptake in the number of enforcement officers in the area as a result.
If there's not, I know someone who's going to be on you. Okay, I think we've got a couple of questions about this before we move on to our comments. So, sorry, can you do, because it's being recorded. So.
Okay, well basically, because you're pushing the CPZs up towards Whitton High Street, the people that are using the shops here will no longer be able to park and do their little bit of shopping. So you're talking about increasing the parking so they can go in there for 2 hours. With the CPZs, they'll all be squeezing fewer and fewer spaces, and the shops will just shut. So, you'll find Whitton High Street remembered with love, you know?
So a couple of things. I realise the CPZ is going to be supported by some and opposed by others. So, this isn't a question at the CPZ at this point, but one thing I would say is there is still plenty of Whitton which is not covered by a CPZ. Certainly close to the High Street, which is going to be not covered by a CPZ. There is a rugby zone on the other side of the station, which is only enforced on rugby day. So there will be plenty of parking spaces in terms of people wanting to travel. The CPZ is proposed to be 10:30 to 2:30, so it's really aimed at trying to tackle the problem of commuter parking. And the third thing is, I realise some people will drive to Whitton High Street, but a lot of people walk and cycle to Whitton High Street. And actually a lot of the footfall that our Whitton High Street shops rely upon are people who walk and cycle to the High Street. So I'm hoping that is not, that shouldn't be overlooked when we're thinking about the impact on the High Street.
Yes, is it the same subject? Yeah, no, that's fine. No. I just want to keep it on the same topic until we move on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I happened to drive down Whitton High Street today. Some of the loading bays, but some of the other bits were actually empty. However, they all, if you're driving and you don't know, they all look the same. You can't read what's on the road when you've got hordes of people behind you. If there is a problem, would there not be a sensible way of actually differentiating those bays in some way?
It's written on the road and it's on the lamp.
Yeah, but you can't. I mean, you're driving in a queue of traffic or whatever. I'm just saying, could you not put something like yellow, no-go zones or something on them?
I'm not the expert on this, but the signing you have to put is very legally prescribed. If the council uses signing which is not within the rules, it makes it ineffective. And people often get off fines by saying that the councils have not followed legal necessities for that signing. So we are prescribed on what we can and cannot do.
So just the one outside Lidl that's got one thing written on the road and one thing on the lamp. Because it's incorrect, you can get away park there all day, every day. You can, basically, which is quite wrong. But someone just needs to come and change that sign, and then that'll be fixed. Okay. Again, is this on the same subject of the parking in the High Street?
Yes.
We'll take this one more, then we'll move on. So again, if you can just wait.
Are we moving on to CPZ later?
That could be an open question.
Well, I did send an email.
It's not a high street issue. I'm not sure. I don't know what the question is.
I'm asking so that I don't talk about it now.
It's not.
Because I do want to talk about it.
Okay, well that will come in an open question.
But on the subject...
No, we've got pre-submitted ones, so this is pre-submitted, this isn't open questions.
Yeah.
So we will give you time to talk about CPZ afterwards, that won't be a problem.
On the subject of the High Street, the lady on the right, I don't think her point was quite clarified. Sorry, I don't know the name, the councillor on the right.
That's Leslie. Yeah.
She brought the point up about the timings for the loading days are restricted to whatever it is, 8:30 to 4:30. That wasn't made clear, but after 4:30 it is indeed okay to park them, and indeed before 8:30 a.m. Is that a fact?
Yes.
Right, yeah, but that didn't come across, frankly.
No, it's just I've got a typo on here that says 6:30, which confused me because I've always thought 8:30 to 4:30, and because I go shopping after 4:30 on the High Street.
Yeah.
And I do
Basically the restrictions are as per on the lampposts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not in either or after. Okay.
Okay. All right, we're going to move on to the next subject. Is Muriel Sprott here? Okay.
Thank you. I wondered if we could have, and I know it's not enforceable, but I wonder if we could have a white keep clear box at the junction of Tranmere Road and Whitton High Street. Because I find turning into the High Street really difficult, and I thought, well, brilliant, now we've got the pedestrian lights outside Lidl's, the traffic will stop one way, and then but no, they just drive up to the car in front and you still can't get out. So I know this box wouldn't be enforceable, but is it possible to have it? Oh, by the way, thank you for putting my name wrong. My fault. I spelled the name wrong, sorry.
Okay, so a box junction at Tranmere Road on the High Street. Is that?
Well, we have an answer to your question, which tells us that yellow boxes are generally only recommended at signalised junctions.
Just like a keep clear box.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, it does say that they can exceptionally consider them. So this isn't a straight no, and but they have, I think, looked at the area and say that it's already pretty busy in terms of road markings at that point. So they are saying that officers would not recommend a yellow box at this location. Clearly, we can say that it wasn't the yellow box that you were asking for. Could you, anyway, yes, a keep clear sign could be looked into, well, sign markings could be looked into, and although not enforceable. So, they say that very few other people have asked for anything like this. So it might be quite interesting to ask around the room whether anybody particularly would like to see this to help you turn right, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I certainly, I know what you mean. You just have to kind of...
Yeah, you also get it with people trying to turn into Tranmere as well.
Yes.
Because some people aren't quite sensible enough to say, I can't clear it, and just block it off.
Any particular views around that?
Yes.
I mean, this isn't a definite no, they won't do it. They're looking for more evidence, I suppose.
Stick your hands up if you think it'd be a good idea. That's probably the quickest way.
Well, I'm a Tranmere resident.
Okay, so we've got quite a few...
Totally agree.
Okay, there you go. We've had a few hands go up.
We've also got bus pulling just opposite, that blocks the road. It's ridiculous. We have a very tight turn to get in and out. And if the lights, people are really rude and don't give us space, they just drop it. Happens all the time.
You can't enforce manners, can you? That'd be nice. Okay, so yeah, quick comment from Matt.
Another problem we have with parking is all the no waiting and no loading markings on the curbstones, the bits, have all been jet washed off because when they hit the pavement, they've taken in all the no waiting lines on. So around like Archie's at the top of Tranmere, you've got all people parking. It feeds into no traffic warnings, but also the official markings are missing.
Can we have those put back on, please?
Yes, I think actually John knows we've asked for this, but it hasn't happened yet, has it? But John helpfully sent that in quite a while ago, along with a whole lot of other things, probably that little sign as well.
Apparently, there's a question from John Evans, but it's not on my bit of paper. No, I haven't got it on mine.
It's down there, just below Michael's. You haven't got it?
Should we ask that? Should we let him ask that question? Yeah, go on then, John. If you'd like to ask your question, please.
Councillor Jay has already mentioned the police liaison group, and I'm chairman of the Whitton and Heathfield police liaison group. My question is, could we please have an update on the alterations needed to provide the Whitton Safer Neighbourhood team with a suitable part-time police space at Murray Park Hall? Last October there was a great fanfare made by the council in the local papers and on social media with photographs of the mayor handing over the key of Murray Park Hall to PCSO Bill Smith. To date, I have not been advised that the fairly minor alterations requested have been approved and the work set in motion.
Who would like to take charge of that one?
I want to answer Leslie or?
Is your red light on?
No. Yes, it's on now.
Yes, John, I mean, we've talked about this before. As far as I know, at the moment, there aren't any plans, but I, as you know, have taken it upon myself to approach a couple of other avenues to get that wall up. One is the Safer Neighbourhood Board, which is not easy, although it's not impossible. And the other one that has been suggested to me is to apply for a Civic Pride grant, because it's not a vast amount of money. And as I said to you earlier before we started, I will continue with this and hopefully I will get a result, because I consider it to be important. And as a community safety person, it's in my bag, and I will carry on as long as possible, and I will get it.
I'm sure he'll keep on at you if it doesn't. So we have another one from Uriel as well. Just go back to yours.
Thank you. Just an update, please, on Turing House School.
Okay.
And yeah, I see you've got a big display here. Yesterday, from my door came Whitman's Twickenham comments with Nella Hall sales being confirmed. I can't think of anywhere better for the school. All the main services are already on the site. Huge playing field, old buildings behind the great listed building that need to be knocked down and rebuilt. Buses past the door. It's got everything going for it, but the field in the middle of nowhere hasn't got.
Okay. All right. Before we move on, before I ask the panel to answer on this, I have been asked by the council to emphasise that the panel's answers are personal. It is not policy, so they can speak freely. It's a personal answer. So we would like to go.
Can I just clarify? That's because it's going through a planning process at the moment. So it's important that we make that distinction clear.
Sorry, it does say that down here. So not to prejudice the forthcoming planning process, as I believe. Are you all on the planning committee?
I can't be on the planning committee because I'm very determined. On the last issue you mentioned about Nella Hall, as far as I know, the Education and Skills Funding Agency, which is the government department which buys land on which to put free schools, isn't interested in buying Nella Hall. It is up to them to buy the land. They have expressed no interest to do so. Now, since the last meeting, what has happened is, as I'm sure some of you are aware, the London Authority, the London Mayor's Department, put some questions down about the application that the council had from the Education and Skills Funding Agency for House School on the Hospital Bridge Road site. The developers have come back with their answers to the questions that the London Mayor put to them, and planning officers have been going through all of those answers since. I was speaking to very senior planning officials this morning about this. They believe that it may be possible for a planning application to be heard by a June committee or a July committee. The June dates are the 12th of June, the July dates are the 3rd of July and the 24th of July. Reading their comments to me, I think it is more likely to be a July meeting and a late July meeting rather than the first two I've mentioned, simply because of the amount of work that has to be done. So there could be a committee meeting, as I say, on the 12th of June, the 3rd of July, or the 24th of July. And bearing in mind the importance of this particular application, it will most probably be a very single issue meeting. In other words, it will only be deciding on that particular issue. So that's where we are. The leader who has disappeared, the leader was saying to me as well earlier today that he is of the opinion that it would be wrong for a planning application like this to be heard during the school holidays, which means if it doesn't make the 24th of July, it won't be anywhere until September. And we have great difficulty, in fact, in making sure that we have a panel to hear it, because an awful lot of planning members are predetermined, because the chair of the planning committee opposes this particular planning application. I, as joint vice chair, do as well. So we do have some difficulty in making sure that we can have a proper panel to make the decision, because the people who make the decision cannot be people who have strong feelings about an application. This is very unusual. It doesn't normally happen. It's just that a few of the planning pool have already made their minds up on this particular application, so therefore can't be part of any committee making a decision. So that's where we are at the moment. And as I'm sure you know, any decision that we take as a council then has to be decided upon actually at the London Mayoralty afterwards, because they have the right to make a decision as well. So we make a decision, and if the London Mayor doesn't like it, he can overturn it. It only happens in very rare cases, but this is one of the cases in which the London Mayor can overturn a decision we take as a council.
Yeah, if I can just talk specifically about the Nella Hall question. Obviously I sensed a little bit of support in the room potentially for putting this school in Nella Hall, and there are some fairly solid reasons why this wouldn't be either practical or even a good idea. The first, if we talk about why it wouldn't be a good idea, is that if Hospital Bridge Road is not the right geographical location for this school, then neither is Nella Hall. We all know the catchment area from which it was created and where the potential need for places is, and putting it in Whitton is no less illogical than putting it in Heathfield. But additionally, the problem with the Nella Hall site, and probably this is why the ESFA haven't even looked at it or sort of sensibly considered it, is it's an extremely difficult site. I'm sure for those of you that have looked at the plans and the drawings at the back of the room, this is a sort of site where the Ministry of Defence have not been able to find the budget to be able to keep it the way it needs to be kept and make it fit for purpose. And there's no way, I'm sure you're aware of how tight education budgets are at the moment, there's no way a school could afford to house itself in a grade Grade 2 listed building that needs millions and millions and millions of pounds spent on it to even just get it up to any sort of use. On top of that, you've got protected MOL land there, so exactly the same as Hospital Bridge Road, and a lot of the trees on the site are fully protected as well. So it's a very, very, very tricky site, and this is potentially why, you know, there aren't, you know, lots and lots of buyers sort of trying to bite the hand off the Ministry of Defence to have this site. And as much as I say, I sense there was some support in the room for putting Turing House there, it's neither logical or practical, and a state school couldn't afford to be located in a Grade 2 listed building and keep that building the way it needs to be kept. So I think, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, my belief is this is not a sensible option for Turing House.
I've just been told that schools broke up on the 23rd of July, so I'm not quite sure the information about the 24th of July. I need to really look into that, because I know the leader is very concerned that the application isn't heard during the school holidays. Now, if the schools break up on the 23rd of July and a planning meeting is on the 24th of July, you could argue that that would be a bad time. So I need to go and talk to the leader, who has had to go somewhere else now, and sort out with him how he feels about that. So I was saying July the 24th, it might not be.
Excuse me,
Sorry, can you just wait for the mic, please? Thank you.
Hi. To me, it's as clear as mud, all this Turing House lot, and I don't know what, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. You're saying the mayor, and you're making a planning something or other. I mean, I don't understand. Can you start in words of one syllable right at the beginning and get an explanation?
I thought you were on the planning committee at one time. Am I mistaken?
A long time ago.
Oh, what would you like explained? Sorry.
Well, everything, what the mayor said, because I thought you'd sent something off to the mayor already.
The planning department sent something off to the mayor, yes. What the mayor did is come back on the original planning application that was put in. The Mayor of London said that he was dissatisfied that potential sites in Hounslow had not been looked into.
Oh, and also...
there was an impact on the openness of the metropolitan open land that they were unhappy about. The parking provision on site was unacceptable because that goes against the London plan, and there was no public access on any of the site which is necessary as far as the London Mayor is concerned. So the London mayoralty was saying it didn't like the application on those four issues. The developer has come back and answered all those issues, whether properly or not, we don't know, because we haven't yet seen the report from the planning department.
So what you wanting to...
Sorry, it's only because it's being recorded we need the mic used. If you can just hold it up quite close to your mouth. That's it, there you go. Now you can hear yourself.
What planning application are you going to put in? You're talking about making a planning application. If the mayor's turned it down and said...
The mayor hasn't turned the application down. The mayor has said that as far as they are concerned, there were 4 areas that they thought did not correspond to the London plan. That's the London-wide planning, and has asked the developer to go into more detail of how the developer can overcome those objections. The developer has sent in his response to that, and planning officials are now going through it all so that they can make a report to tell us what the facts are.
And also, just to clarify, it's not our planning application. The planning application has come from the Education Skills and Funding Agency on behalf of the school. It's not a council build, it's not a council planning application. And the reason you ask why is the mayor involved, it's because it's metropolitan open land, and that's why the Mayor of London is involved.
Okay. Anyone else on the panel have anything to add? Or shall we? Okay, Joan Gibson.
Hello, it was a couple of questions I sent you earlier on different subjects.
I believe cycling in Whitton is probably the lowest of any ward in Richmond, and I believe it's been reducing lately. I hardly ever see any cyclists. So really I'm looking for some sort of plan that the community can get involved with to try and improve cycling. Some of the things that have made cycling worse is what happened to Whitton High Street, and it's just a nightmare to cycle on now. We're missing things such as when we do a road change, we don't appear to plan to make it better for cyclists at the same time. So we'll make pavements wider to make it better for pedestrians while cutting off all of the area that the bikes could go in. So really want to look at some sort of thing that we can start getting together in Whitton to start looking at the state of our cycling and having a bit more of a long term. And although 20 miles per hour is better for cyclists, it's not when you have all of this congestion and cycle lanes are car parks, and so making roads narrow like we have, which just seems to have got worse and worse.
Okay, so your general question here is, are there any provisions planned for cycling in Whitton, or improvements planned for cycling in Whitton?
Well, I think I've been volunteered to answer this one as the most keen cyclist of the board here. Yes, I cycle my son part of the way to school just to make sure he's safe to get past the Percy Road, because Hospital Road and Percy Road are a nightmare to cross as a cyclist, even as a somewhat aggressive cyclist as me, let alone more vulnerable cyclists like the numerous school children who now go from the area, cycle over to Richmond Pond 10 School, go to Twickenham School, etc., etc. One of the things, when we had our discussions about Nelhor site, one of the things I asked the lovely people who gave this presentation was, would it be possible to put a cycle lane from one side of Nelhor to the other, so that cyclists wouldn't have to go down that ridiculously narrow bit of Nella Road, which they send the White One down for some reason. There is mentioned in my notes here about the possibility of putting cycle lanes through, making conversations with Hounslow Borough about having cross-borough things. The width of the pavements on the High Street are somewhat ridiculous, and there could be an argument to put a cycle lane in to go to the cycle path by the cycle parking by the station, which is I think I have noticed that numerous of the loops on the High Street are constantly being crashed into by motorists by the looks of it. I don't know how this happens without anyone noticing, but I have reported it to officers on several occasions, and I'm sure there's numerous times I've missed them. But yeah, this is a concern of mine because I'm trying to get my kids to cycle to school, and it's not safe. And it's not safe across the borough for cyclists. And I have found that there's numerous places where there looks like there might be cycle lanes, but I'm going, am I allowed to cycle here? Am I not? So I believe that it might be necessary for me to talk to the cycling champion and get some matters looked into to improve cycling, not only in Whitton and Heathfield, but across the borough, because there are cycle lanes which have disappeared, apparently, and there's no clear signage for the cycle lanes we do have. As I've known when I've been cycling across the borough to various meetings, that I've been going down the cycle path and then suddenly I can't tell whether the cycle path continues straight ahead or I'm meant to get on the road. So I'm fully agree with you on this, and I am going to talk to the cycling champion and others about trying to improve the quality of cycling provision in this borough, as we are trying to become the greenest borough in the city. Not having a decent cycle infrastructure is not good.
The one thing I will say quickly just about the High Street is about the width of the pavement. If you have a look at the pavements, there's actually studs down them
from the shops to the studs is actually the shop's property. So you can't start to take that away. So the actual pavement really is only from the studs to the curbstones. Some people don't seem to realise.
I just wanted to say, Joan, I think one of the things that in some parts of the borough there's quite an active kind of cycling kind of lobby. In sort of my time, I've not been approached at all about cycling. So the thing I'd say to you is if there are areas where you think we could be making improvements, and I think we'd like to hear where you think where they could be made. And I think we'd certainly be interested to try and take some of those forward. The other thing which I wanted to mention is there was a couple of cycling, the Dockler bikes, which some people may have seen. One was operated in Richmond and the other was operated in Hounslow. We are going, the one that was operating in our borough has certainly been pulled out now, but we're asking for views on people's views around Dockler's bicycle use. So that consultation is sort of ongoing at the moment. So again, if people want to sort of make their views known on that, they would be, we'd like to hear them.
Just get the mic down the front here. Sorry, we'll come out. Yes, we've got a comment from the front here. Sorry.
Cycling. Now I've been walking around High Street where I live and so on, and I've nearly been run over quite often by school kids going past me on their bike, on the pavement, on the thin pavement. And that's happening an awful lot. And I've nearly been knocked down a few times, and I wondered, a long time ago, I used to do cycling proficiency at schools, primary schools. Do they still do cycling proficiency?
Oh yes.
So, could you get them on to telling the kids not to cycle on the pavement? So when I challenge them, I get a mouthful. So what can we do about that?
I do know that the headmistress at Twickenham School has been quite proactive in talking to her children about it. I'm not 100% sure about Richmond upon Thames School. Next time I speak to the headmaster, I'll ask them. The other schools in the area, I don't think many kids cycle to the primary schools in the area, but it's mainly the teenagers or the high school students who will be the most problematic. Do you happen to recognise the uniforms that they were in?
No, they're not. No, they weren't in uniform. It was kind of after school at the weekends.
I must admit, I've seen mainly young adults. Men in the 20s seem to be the worst for it.
Yeah.
And that is the real one which I've noticed is it's usually, because there was like, this time last year there were a lot of teenagers in their uniforms heading down the high street. I remember seeing it, and then I remember after the Twickenham school head teacher started taking action, I noticed a distinct drop in those. But it is something that the schools should be reminding their pupils, especially when they're encouraging them to cycle in, to cycle responsibly. And I know that the council does a cycling proficiency course over the summer. And I know that the schools have a policy of only allowing kids who have passed that to cycle in, but
The kids do realise that they're not supposed to cycle on pavements, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing to take into look, there's definitely a proportion of people, especially teenagers, we've had this come up before, who are cycling not only on the pavement but unsafely on the pavement as well. And there's a section of people who are sort of doing it, almost sort of flouting what they know that they shouldn't be doing. But I think that one of the things that we're hoping that's going to come out of improving cycling infrastructure that we were just talking about previously, but also making our roads safer as well. We're hoping that that actually will encourage more people to be cycling on the roads and not on the pavements, because I know there is an element, and I'm not excusing it, but there's an element of people who cycle on the pavements because they don't feel safe to cycle on the roads.
Yes, and can I just add, because I walk down the high street on a very regular basis, it's not just youngsters who are cycling on the pavements, it's people of my age group and slightly younger. And the reason they're doing it is they feel unsafe in the road. And we have to realise, let's not keep saying it's youngsters who do it. It's not only youngsters, it is people across all age groups. And when I'm in the high street at 3:30 in the afternoon, it tends to be people in their 50s and 60s who are doing it. And actually, I don't blame them.
Can I just add, I raised this at the last community conversation, but I do think there's an awful lot of people who ride their bikes on the pavements in, say, Whitton High Street and other sites, and I don't ride on the High Street, but I don't think they know that it is legal. I think there's a lot of people are here and they just see other people cycling on the high street. The students at least have been told, the school children have been told by their psychoproficiency, etc., that you've just explained, that people, they know that they shouldn't be doing it, but they are. But I do think, as the councillor said, there are an awful lot of people that are cycling on the pavement, some for safety, but there are an awful lot of people that are just doing it because they see somebody else there and they do not even think about it because maybe they're working in the area. I know I have next door neighbours who are working on Twickenham Station who cycle there. They would think twice of cycling on the pavement.
I'd like to think they do actually know it's illegal. And I think we have to move on because we're running out and we need to move to some open questions. But we do have, I think we'll take the last pre-submitted question because it's to do with the poster that's over there as well. And Joan has another question she would like to ask. Sorry if we just get the question. Take this one, then we will move to open questions and we'll have about 40 minutes on that. So.
Good timing, guys, because you've got the thing about to stop idling. I suppose my question would be, because I see a lot of tweets coming out from the council, and I'm really for it, with the high amount of pollution and everything that's coming out now to show the damage that pollution is causing. How are we going to get this message out more? And I think schools are perfect, because certainly around Heathfield, the reason Heathfield always gets hit, and it's terrible with traffic, it's such a large school. But when I walk, I live there, I'll go past 5 cars that are sitting there idling, waiting for their kids to come round. But can we start getting this out to the schools and really start banging it out?
Joan, yes, I completely agree with that, and both John and I are governors at Heathfield School. I know exactly what you mean on Powder Mill Lane, so we need to get that message out loud and clear as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very happy to take it to the lead member for schools and education, who can disseminate that information through the head teachers forum or something like that, and see if we can really start, like you say, using the schools to get the information out.
I think the other thing I was going to add is around the traffic enforcement officers also have the power now to talk to drivers, and if they don't turn off their engine, they can be fined. There was, I don't know if anybody saw it, there was a piece on the London News last night about trying to increase that fine more than in current years, but it's a starting point. So, you know, hopefully the increase in the number of traffic enforcement, and also they're targeting some of the places where there are particular problems with idling, so outside schools or by railway crossings and things. So hopefully those two things. The other, I mean, we have written to schools and to businesses to try and encourage them to sort of get that message out. I'm a governor, not of the school here, it's in Stevens by the A316. Which we have a significant problem with air pollution, and we are trying to make sure that one of the areas where we want to get the message out, hopefully to actually the kids in the school, so they can go home and tell their parents that sort of to try and cut down on the traffic idling. So I think anything which we can do to try and promote that message, anything you can do to help promote that message would be great. And if you've got any ideas of where we can get that message out, I'm sure it would be great to hear them. So.
Okay, I think we've got one final comment on this and then we will move on to the open questions.
Hello, yeah, with regard to the idling, obviously I understand people that are parked outside a station waiting to do a pick-up or something, they're effectively parked, they're not stopped. modern cars have auto stop-start, so that they'll do it exactly like. Do the councillors, and I'll quite understand if you say you don't know the answer right now, if you've got an older car and they're at a red light, is it more or less environmentally friendly to stop and restart that engine? It's not designed in the same way as the modern cars with a built-in system, or should they keep their engine running?
I mean, when we started this campaign, I have an older car. It doesn't cut out when you stop, and so I asked, am I supposed to turn my engine off at red lights then? And the answer was a very clear no. So I can't tell you what is more or less environmentally friendly, but I was told that the anti-idling campaign isn't a question of traffic lights. It's more, well, I mean, where we've been campaigning is at the railway crossings, and clearly we should be outside schools as well. So I think the answer is no, you don't have to turn your engine off. I just hasten to add my old car is very environmentally friendly. It's very small.
The other thing, I mean, one of the things, I live quite close to Bishop Perrin School, and you do see a number of parents who are sitting in the car with the sort of cars running. So I think that's who it's in terms of the idling message that we want to get out. It's more the railway crossings, when you're just sat in the car on your phone, if you're reading, if you're waiting for somebody to come out from the shops. It's those opportunities where you can actually turn it off for a good sort of couple of minutes. I think that's the sort of important time to sort of turn off the car engine. And just on your point on more modern cars, my old car did have the start-stop technology, but it wasn't actually that very good. So it only operated when the car was had been running for some time. So I think it's I think that was a little bit of a, certainly the older ones were a little bit of a sop to try and get the emissions down, so that you could get a lower car tax at the time. So I think things are obviously they've changed now with the emission standards.
If you just use the microphone so we can hear up here.
The start-stop cars, if they don't cut the engine, it's because there's not enough power in the battery or whatever to restart it again, and it's going to cause more problems, isn't it? So if the technology's in there to stop the engine when it's safe, and it's going to restart when you take the brake, sometimes it will just keep running because the engine is not so really safe. People stop it and can't start. The new technology really is the way to do it, isn't it? The older cars are going to
Okay, so that I think concludes the pre-submitted questions. So we're going to go to open questions. Can I just remind you, it's non-political, it's non-Brexit, it's non-EU. Anything local, you can have the hands up and we'll go to you one at a time. I think we'll start on the back row here and move along. And then, if you can just say your name and where you're from so the ward councillors know who you're talking to.
I'm Rila Gordon and I'm from Whitton.
That's fine, yes, so the councillors know who you're addressing.
I want to talk about CPZs in Montrose Avenue, where every house has got room for at least 2 cars on their drive. And a lot of us do use it for commuting. Some people living in that road put bollards, council bollards, I don't know how they get them, but they put them on the bit of pavement where you could park, thus claiming that part of the road when they've already got room for 2 or 3 cars, and this is every house, and they put bollards up to stop us. I mean, admittedly, sometimes it's because they've got work going on, but 9 times out of 10 it isn't. It's claiming public land, and it's allowed. And furthermore, there are a lot of houses that I see where they haven't paid to have their curb dropped, but they've knocked down the wall, so you daren't park there for fear of having your car smashed, and that's actually happened. that I've had problems where they haven't paid to have the curb dropped, but you know, so you park there knowing it's legal so to do, but then they've done things to your car.
Okay, who wants to take that one up?
Montrose. The council at the moment is doing a piece of work around the borough to look at what is illegal access to property where people don't have drop curbs. We're actually trying to see how much of an issue this really is. The idea is to approach those people who are illegally crossing the pavements and see whether they will give the £1,000 that's required to get a dropped curb, and then put drop curbs in for those people who wish to have them. Anyone can apply for a dropped curb. It costs about £1,000, as I say, because there's planning costs and the cost to actually come along and do that. So a piece of work is being done right the way across the borough to identify those properties where the owners are illegally crossing the pavements to access their property. It is illegal for a car to go across the pavement if there is no drop curb. The law is such that someone has to observe the car actually doing it. It's not good enough to actually see a car in someone's front garden.
So I can't hear you saying...
Can I just answer the question first? So that's answering that part of the question. The borough is at the moment doing this because it is an issue in quite a large part of the borough. So that's being done. On the question of Montrose Avenue, it was the residents in Montrose Avenue who approached council to have a CPZ. The council listened to them. The majority of the people who responded to that consultation from Montrose Avenue said they wanted a CPZ. Therefore, a CPZ will go in, and within that CPZ will be defined areas for people to go and park. Who are not residents. There will be parking spaces for people to use between the hours of 10:30 and 2:30. Of course, people will have to pay for a ticket, but that will be within that zone. So there will be parking within the zones for residents who don't live in the area to use, because there will be some dedicated parking spaces for that to happen.
So the people that are using legal spaces at the moment to get to work will not be able to do that any longer?
The CPZs are designed to stop commuter parking.
Right, so people who live miles away from one of the stations are going to be...
Yes, that's the idea. And bear in mind, it's come to us from the residents of those roads who have found commuter parking to be an issue. This is not the council introducing this because the council wants to. It is the council introducing this because the residents of those roads want there to be fair parking in
How
their
many cars do they want?
Okay, we got that. Sorry.
Just on the issue as well, we, as well as the sort of the process to kind of go through and get the controlled parking zone. So we had the petitioning from residents. We then had a consultation. We also had traffic surveys carried out in those areas to see how the parking was being carried out. And it was clear, and I've knocked on many a door in those streets, and certainly in Montrose and in Jubilee, that the issue of getting in and out of driveways is quite tricky for a number of people, and so that is another determining factor for why the residents are choosing to have a controlled parking zone in that area. So yes, I mean I've had emails from people who don't live in that area who are upset that a controlled parking zone is being implemented, but you know, there is a clear process within the council. Whitton Station is one of the only mainline stations in the entire borough that doesn't have a controlled parking zone around it, and so we've followed the process. There will be a review of the, once the CPZ is introduced after 6 months, there'll be a review, and everybody will be able to feed into that process, both those who live within it and who live outside of it, and that will be taken forward then to the next stage.
Yes, it's some on the same subject. Okay, if you just wait for the mic behind you.
My name's David Gray, and I live at Wilson Garden. That's my little pet. My question is, I believe the process of triggering the consultation appears invalid. I want to point out the following. The implementation of the consultation was based on a petition from over 50% of residents. Despite requests to see the petition, I'm not going to let it. This brings a conflict over the responses to the consultation, where with one exception, there were less than 50% response, and in total it was 44%. So only 44% responded, and yet we're led to believe that the petition had over 50%. That is the process that is down in your consultation. I therefore feel that this has not been a democratic consultation, and that you're targeting individuals in here in order to raise indirect taxation. I believe this was implemented by the council without a petition of over 50%, and I believe that you've actually been gerrymandered. And I think you're going to gerrymander even further. Even the number of figures here.
Okay, if anyone wants to answer that, because we've got to keep the questions a little bit shorter because we need to fit a few people in.
I say,
yeah, it's fine. We just need everything to the point. Would be. I know there's a lot of people want to come in on it as well. So, if anyone want to back the same sort of thing up before we come to the panel.
Hello, I live in Montrose Avenue. My name is Anne, and I started the original petition 2 years ago because the people in the Conservative Council at the time would do nothing to help us. Let me just explain to people who don't live in the area. We have very easy access to Gatwick Airport from Whitton Station via Clapham. We get people parking for 2-3 weeks. We had a car opposite my house last year for 6 weeks because I could barely get out of my driveway. People use us as holiday parking, and commuters are inconsiderate. And I would just like to clarify that not every house has parking for 2 cars in their driveways. There are lots of houses that don't. Jubilee Avenue and Pauline Crescent have the same problems, as does Blandford. The people there, sorry, but the parking is a scourge to us. And I know not everybody is inconsiderate, so I'm not pointing at everybody. But I started the original, I did an unofficial petition. We got 89% and 90% in Jubilee Avenue who wanted the, I think in Montrose we had 75% or something. And the council then had to do an official one, and I know the official one came out with similar figures. So there's no gerrymandering, I know that. I put a lot of work into it. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, we do it. Just going to have a couple from then.
Okay, I'll just answer Mr. Gregg's point. So actually the CPZ that is being referred to here is not the one by Whitton Station, it's the one down by the RFU Stadium and Chasebridge School. Basically, to answer your questions, the petition that was put together, I have personally seen that petition, I mean, obviously you can choose not to believe me, but I have seen it, and it was over 51% of households in the streets that wanted to have a CPZ.
Why not 51% response? Why don't you show me the petition?
My understanding from council officers is that the petition includes personal data because it's got people's contact details and addresses and names. No, there's a data protection in the same way. Well, I can only tell you what the answers are. We cannot publish or hand over to people other people's personal details.
Only 30% of those residents ask for a CPZ.
Right, can you please let me answer? I'd really appreciate it.
They're not true.
All right, this isn't if this is a he said, she said argument, it's not for here. it should be at the right time. It's taking up our time for other questions.
Could I just answer, because I think it's important that everyone in the room here. So I've seen the petition, I have seen that it was triggered properly by the fact that it got more than 51% of households, and the consultation, there was enough support within certain streets. There's nothing untoward being going on. It followed procedure as per the procedure on the council website perfectly. Secondly, in terms of it not being democratic, I think it's been extremely democratic. We included some streets in the consultation who were not part of the original petition, and they came back very strongly and said that they didn't want to be part of the CPZ, and so they are not going to be part of the CPZ. We have not put any streets in the zone that didn't want to be in there. People...
One street is over 50% asking for that CPZ to be put in. We're talking about residents. Not one.
It was triggered properly and the results were done properly, and those streets that very clearly didn't want to be in it are not in it. So we haven't...
Why is that? Because we came to you for a consultation instead of receiving this second-hand, cheap questionnaire that you sent out.
Okay, I'm just answering the questions. So the petition I've seen, it's democratic, we listened to what people said, and only the streets who wanted it are in it. And finally, this idea that the council run around trying to enforce CPZs around the borough as some sort of money-making scheme, as the lady who spoke previously has attested to, and I have as well, because I live on a street that's trying to get included in the CPZ. It is a long, drawn-out, difficult process. We are 2 to 3 years down the line from when a lot of streets started this. It is not quick, it is not easy, and you have to jump through hoops to get one. And therefore, I think the idea that the council are happily handing these CPZs out like confetti in order to make money is simply not true. As I said, you speak to anybody who's tried to get one, and it's extremely difficult.
Right, we're not getting anywhere here, so I think we should move on. If you do have any issues, please take them up afterwards. We'll move on. I think we've given too much time to CPZs. Seriously, I think.
Can I just respond to
Have we got other questions from other people from other subjects? Or, okay, if no one's jumping in with another subject.
Yeah, Mr. Furman, yes, please.
One more.
We spoke about this a few times. The thing was, when the petitions were sent out, but when the consultation things were sent out, it was one per household. Some households had 2 or 3 cars. It should have been sent for enough. What Dave's basically saying is the roads that rejected it were where people took a local petition round and 90% of people rejected it. And that, but we took it to Joe, to be fair, and to be fair to Vince. He said, where is it? There is an overwhelming majority, we won't be having it. In the other streets, it's because people can't be bothered to pick the leaflet up, can't be bothered to read it, can't be asked for extra forms for the wife's car. I'm the man in the house, I pick the mail up, she's not got a car. This was what was wrong with the way it was put out. But to be fair to Joe and everyone else, they've done what they said, they haven't implemented in Chase Gardens. But here's the trouble now. Because Chase Gardens didn't want it, we've suddenly got electric parking bays in the road. Now, I've conducted another petition down the road. Nobody in Chase Gardens has an electric vehicle. Nobody's considering buying one. Because we're outside the CPZ, we're getting pushed and squeezed. Our space is being taken up by people supposedly who come and leave their car all night, in the middle of the night, charging it up. Nobody else will be able to park it. All this is like trying to drive you into a little corner. It's a bad thing. I don't think it was properly conducted, the whole of people, and that's what David's trying to say. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, if I just very briefly answer the question about the electric charging points, there's a consultation going on at the moment about sites across the borough. So in Whitton, there's about 6 sites being consulted on, and the same in Heathfield. No decision has been made on where those electric charging points are going, and I would just encourage people to respond to the consultation with your views about whether you feel that a particular site is appropriate or not appropriate. And I appreciate that what you're saying is that not many people have electric cars at the moment, but a lot of people are not buying electric cars because they're concerned about being able to charge them. And so we feel quite strongly that we need to have these electric vehicle charging points in order to encourage more and more people to get electric cars and improve our air quality, which we know in Whitton and Heathfield is particularly bad. And so in principle it's definitely something that we very much support, but obviously we have to make sure we get the sites of these bays in the right place.
You're right, Joe. How about putting some of the council car parks being paid for?
We have, yeah. And one of the suggestions that's already come out of the consultation is the car park behind Lidl on Whitton High Street. And we actually, when we had a meeting about that, we were surprised to see that it wasn't one of the proposed sites, and so we've definitely asked them to have a good look at that particular street, and there are other streets that are looking to be ruled out and things. So just respond to the consultation, and everybody's opinions will be taken on board. We definitely want to have these electric vehicle charging points, but we absolutely want to make sure we get them in the right place.
Okay, that's it. Are we moving on, or are we on the same subject? Is it? Right, please. Yes, let's move on. Thank you.
Hi, slight change of tack. I didn't realise, John, you're on the planning committee. So Leslie and Liz might keep their heads down on this, but Rob may have an input. Within the GLA's London plan, there's a carbon offset fund. Yep. In the context of Whitton and Heathfield, it applies to both. Have you got any feel for the amount of money that's been generated, and then where the money's gone, and how it's going to be allocated? It hasn't been, and you've got a smile on your face, so this is obviously going to be a good one. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that, but I don't think it would be a good one. We were talking about this morning. We are actually trying to find out exactly how much money the council has got, where it is, and which bits of the borough can it be allocated to. There's 2 funds actually. There is the fund you're talking about, that if a planning application doesn't meet the desired sustainable thing, the developer has to give the council money for not meeting that, and the council then has that money in this fund.
It's £1,800 per tonne of carbon.
Yes, so we're very interested in finding out how much money we've got and where it is, because we would like to spend it. And we'd like to spend it as it's meant to be spent as well. So we have asked officers, and we did it this morning actually, we asked officers to put together a paper for us so that we know the exact things and we'll be able to tell you. How long it will take officers to do that, we're not sure. But,
when you get that information, will you circulate that? When you get that information, is it your intention at this time to circulate that so everybody knows?
We will be finding ways of making sure the communities know what's happening to the money that's allocated to those communities, yes. As you can tell, we're just trying to find out all the information at this moment.
Okay, hopefully that answers your query. Is this on the same thing, or is this a new question? Okay, well, I think unless it's quick, it will be the last one, so it depends how quick the answers are.
About 2 months ago in Whitton High Street, contractors did some work, some gas work. They ripped up the York stone about 2 months ago. People complained on social media, and I said, I thought that the council were going to get Conway to do the job properly. Now it's 2 months ago. They just filled it up with asphalt. About 6 or 8 places, quite considerable dobs of asphalt. Can you tell me what's going to happen with those, please?
Yes, I can. In theory, at least. Because that very day that it happened, Councillor Coombs told me, and I got onto the council because it was actually, I mean, it appeared that there was extremely little care being taken, and the Yorkstone paving was just being smashed to pieces and getting added to a pile of rubble. The answer I got was that it was an emergency gas leak. And so the priority was to get to the bottom of it, as it were, as soon as possible, and that the Yorkstone paving came second. However, it is nevertheless the responsibility, in the end, of the utilities companies to pay to fix these things. So, certainly in theory, that should all get fixed, and not at the council's expense. However, I'm sure anyone walking down Whitton High Street knows there's any number of spots of the pavement that haven't been reinstated as they should be, and the example you've given is a recent and particularly bad example. But certainly we have had the answer that in time these things are going to get fixed. We'll see.
On the case. I have contacted officers myself a couple of times. Most recently, I believe it was Friday, I contacted them, but I'm looking at my email now trying to find if I've got a reply from them. I'm sure I did, but my ability to search has failed me tonight. But yeah, we are aware of it, and as I'm often on High Street, I see this, and because I'm Paul Market delivers leaflets on the High Street, I walked to he was giving the leaflets, and what I went, use language which I will not use here, about the state of the pavement, and I saw it, and yes, I, like everyone else who uses the High Street, I'm not impressed with the constant utilities digging up the High Street and just putting any old rubbish down. So every time I see it, I am trying to get in contact with officers. They might be avoiding me.
Okay, I think we've got one comment from the back on this.
Hello. Regarding these bits of rubble, I actually did a report online earlier this week, and the council officers came back within 24 hours and gave a report very efficiently, very quickly. What they said is the utility company has 6 months so they can put a temporary repair in, and only at that point in time can the council either reinstate and then try to claim the money back, or can the council try to pursue the enforcement actions against the utility company. What I didn't get a clear answer from, and again the councillors might not have an answer on this, because some of the areas, or most of this particular work, is behind the studs and therefore in the shops area, if the utility companies are on the ball, does the council still have the ability to enforce, or does it then come down to either the shop owners or the council, probably the council having to meet that cost out of their own budgets?
We can find out the answer to that. I would assume, I mean, one of the issues which has been slowing it down is just the getting the money from the contractors. And so I would assume it's a similar case, that it has to be up to us to get the money out of, whether it's Thames Water or Cadent or whoever it is who happens to be digging it up. But I'm sure we can find the answer out, and we can put it into the notes of the this evening's event.
Okay, as I say, time has pretty much caught up with us. We don't have time for any more comments. We have to move on to the last bit, so I'm just going to invite one of the ward councillors to give a little bit of a talk about the budgets and your finances, it says here.
I guess that should be me, since it's my idea for the entire borough. So one of the things that we want to try and do going forward, and you know, we've got a good turnout this evening. But one of the things we'd like to do is to encourage the ability for wards and for residents to be able to influence how we spend a sort of pot of money. So we're looking to sort of give each ward a pot of money, and in this case we probably would combine Whitton and Heathfield together to sort of see what we can sort of spend on sort of improvements, and you know, it would be only a small amount of money probably to begin with. We're looking at somewhere between £5,000 to £10,000 per ward. So it's not a huge amount of money, but it's a starting point. A lot of other local authorities have something similar, and so we're trying to sort of bring something like that in here. Over time, I'd quite like to see the ability to have more influence over some of the sort of decisions that get made in each area, and that would be something that I'd like to see. But the starting point for us is about sort of giving residents the ability to spend a little bit of money in their area. So it was just really it's for us to kind of say we're looking into it. If you've got any ideas about what sort of things that we would like to potentially spend money on, or how we could spend money on things, whether or not we should keep them separate between Whitton and Heathfield, then we'd really like your feedback on that. You don't have to do it now, but I'd be happy to take it. But please do kind of think about that sort of little neighbourhood pot that we'd like to kind of bring forward. I'm hoping it's going to be some point this year that we'll start to bring it through. But obviously we want feedback first. So.
Okay, that does pretty much. The questions are closed. But if you want to speak to them, the councillors will still be here for about another 15 minutes or so. Just want to point you to the displays at the back regarding Nella Hall. Please have a look at those. Also, some of you will have seen, some of you may not, on the social media sites. Ed Harris, who's our local historian, has just written a book about the history of Nella Hall. Stupidly, I didn't bring any with me, but they are available in Tribes Furnishings, and they're £6 each. So if anyone wants one of the Nella Hall, his books, he wrote a Whitton one a few years ago, and he's just done one on the history of Nella Hall, and it's selling very well. That's available from Tribes Furnishing in Whitton High Street. But I'd like to, unless anyone has anything quickly they'd like to say, they do.
Very quick plug, if you don't mind. On a Friday morning here at the community centre, there is a community cafe from 9:30 to 12:30. If anybody knows anybody who would like to just come and have a cup of tea, coffee and a chat, no charge, donuts provided. So if you know anybody who's lonely who might like to do that, as I said, it's every Friday morning from 9:30 to 12:30, and it's in the back room out here.
If I could just say, anyone who hasn't had the time to look at the Nella Hall information at the back and needs to be getting home now, there will be a further display of all this and people to talk to about it in the library on Saturday morning. And council officers will be there. So, or if you think of questions that you haven't asked tonight, there's a second go at all this Nella Hall stuff on Saturday morning. And in case I don't get the microphone again, I wanted to thank our chair, because I think he does a...
Sorry, also just to point out that we have a monthly surgery, and it's the last Saturday of every month, between 10 and 12 in the morning. You don't have to book an appointment, it's just a drop in, and it's at the Whitton Youth Zone on Britannia Lane, which is just behind Barclays Bank on the High Street. So do come along if you need to see us about any particular issues, or you want to give us some feedback, or just say hello, or bring donuts, or whatever you want to. Lovely to see you.
Okay, so I'd like to thank everyone for getting... Oh, you're desperate. You're desperate.
I really am desperate to say this because it's a bit of a safety warning for the use of the building. I've been on a couple of committee meetings here with John. We talked about the fire exit. If you ladies, fortunately the meeting is finished now, but if you ladies have got high heels on, don't go out the fire exit. Paving is all collapsed. We spoke about getting it repaired, but nobody's done a thing about it. Yeah, I'm just saying.
What about us gents in high heels? Is there only ladies in high heels?
No, I'm just thinking about
No, that's good. That's a good point.
but we talked about it, but nothing's happened. The paving outside of the garden area is all right the place. And you did say earlier tonight, it wasn't question time, so I didn't put my hand in there. Well, I wanted to respond, and you said there's a need for paving here. It would be. There's a definite need at the back end. So perhaps on the way up, I'll look at it if we want.
Thank you for that. I'd also like to thank Ellie and the Community Conversation team for putting these events on, the councillors for turning up, and for the local police who didn't get grilled this time, which I think they're going to be quite happy about. And thank you all you lot for coming. The next one will be probably the same time next year. So, every 6 months apparently, I've just been told. It may be next year, it could be 6 months. Keep an eye out.